Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, everyone. We're going to set the scene today in an ancient landscape where a massive miscommunication, and I mean a miscommunication that literally changed the course of history, took place. Picture this. You've got a massive, eager crowd, a truly revolutionary teacher, and a profound message that just completely went over everyone's heads. It's a fascinating story, and honestly, it reveals so much about human nature and exactly where we tend to place our focus.
It's a remarkably simple question, right? But just think about the incredible irony of those ancient crowds. They were standing right there, literally face to face with the very source of life, listening to a message that could absolutely change their eternal destiny. And yet, they were really only thinking about their stomachs. It's wild. But, this bridges a fascinating gap between their ancient world and ours today. It really makes you stop and ask about your own focus. When we're presented with something profound, what are we really looking for? Are we just seeking a quick fix for our immediate appetites? Or are we hungry for something much, much deeper?
Let's look at the actual text that started the whole shebang. The core quote from John chapter 6, verse 29 reads, "This is the work of God, that you exercise faith in the one whom he sent." Jesus was introducing a profound and frankly entirely unexpected concept to his audience here. He wasn't talking about physical labor. He wasn't asking them to go build monuments or perform some exhausting checklist of rituals. He was asking for something internal, a completely different kind of work.
So the crucial point is that this new work of God explicitly meant exercising faith in Jesus in order to have everlasting life. And this concept, it echoes throughout the scriptures, like in John 3 and John 17, constantly emphasizing that exercising this faith is an absolute requirement. Just look at the incredibly high stakes we're talking about here. We aren't just talking about extending a physical life by a few years or getting some kind of temporary reward. We are talking about everlasting life. It is without a doubt the ultimate offer.
But how did the crowd actually react to this amazing spiritual offer? Well, many did not accept this new teaching. Instead of being completely awestruck by the promise of everlasting life, they just missed the mark entirely. They pushed back. They simply could not wrap their minds around this new work of God that Jesus was presenting to them.
In fact, their reaction wasn't just confusion. They actively demanded proof. Their skepticism was loud and clear. They asked him directly, "What are you performing as a sign so that we may see it and believe you?" Think about the pacing and the energy of that moment. Jesus is literally offering them the pathway to everlasting life, and their immediate, super-transactional responses effectively show us a magic trick. Give us a sign first.
Let's move along and see how this builds across time, because this perfectly captures exactly where their heads were at. In Moses' day, their ancestors received literal manna. They were given physical bread from the sky to survive. Fast forward to their present first-century moment, and Jesus is standing right there offering them true bread. And ultimately, this points to an everlasting future, life gained through faith. But here is the massive problem. The crowd's minds were stuck firmly in the past. They were entirely focused looking backward at the literal physical bread of their ancestors, rather than looking forward to the incredible everlasting future standing right in front of them. And this brilliantly illustrates the core contrast we're dealing with in this explainer. On one hand, we have physical needs. The manna they kept bringing up from Moses' day, it was just literal bread. It filled the stomach for a day, and then, guess what? You were hungry again. On the other hand, we have spiritual truth. The true bread from heaven that Jesus was offering is life-giving. It's an eternal, permanent solution. The crowd was absolutely fixated on their physical needs, while Jesus was desperately trying to hand them everlasting spiritual truth. Which leads us to a moment of sheer, tragic irony. They completely failed to press Jesus for clarification. When Jesus spoke next of the true bread from heaven, which was meant to be this life-giving, ultimate manna, you would naturally think the crowd would stop and say, "Wait, what does that mean? How do we get this true bread?" But they didn't. They just stopped asking questions. The moment the conversation shifted from physical food to spiritual truth, their curiosity just completely vanished. Now, what's really interesting here is mapping out the total disconnect between the two sides. It's like they're speaking two entirely different languages. The crowd's focus is stubbornly on literal bread, while Jesus' message is entirely about spiritual truth. The crowd just wants their immediate physical needs met. Jesus is talking about everlasting life. The crowd is clinging desperately to past events, like the manna their ancestors ate, but Jesus is demanding present faith right then and there. They were looking right at each other, but having two completely different conversations. Let's distill our final takeaways and look at exactly why the crowd missed the point so spectacularly. Their minds were centered solely on literal bread. They were so hyper-focused on their physical needs that it created a massive blind spot. And because of that short-sightedness, they simply ignored the profound spiritual truths being shared directly with them. Ultimately, because they didn't care about the spiritual side of things, they failed to press for clarification. Their obsession with the physical literally caused them to ignore the life-saving message of faith right in front of them.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to slow down for a second and leave you with this provocative challenge. In your own life, are you focused on the physical manna, or are you seeking the true bread from heaven? When you're confronted with profound spiritual truths, do you find yourself prioritizing your immediate physical needs, or are you doing the true work of God, exercising faith for everlasting life? It's a really powerful question, one that spans all the way from ancient history right up to our present day. Keep that thought with you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I genuinely hope this inspires you to keep seeking the true bread.